You having a huge party?
Nope, just me.
Get delicious cuisine from the country's best chefs delivered right to your door with the click of a button.
You've probably heard of the NFL's Rooney Rule, but is it really working in 2021? The NFL policy was named after the league's former diversity committee chairperson, the late Dan Rooney. It was instituted in 2003, then expanded in 2009, requiring teams with vacancies for head coaches, general managers, and similar front office roles to interview at least one diverse candidate for those jobs. In 2003, there had only been 6 black head coaches in the modern era. The rule appeared to show promise in 2006 and 2007, with 6 black head coaches in permanent positions. In 2020, the rule was updated, requiring teams to interview at least 2 external minority candidates for head coaching openings and at least 1 minority candidate for any coordinator job, as well as 1 external minority candidate for senior football operations and general manager jobs. The truth is, only 4 head coaches of color and 4 general managers of color hold positions in the NFL, and 2 of the 32 NFL teams have owners who are not white. The numbers are glaring, and the interviewing process has shown to be more of a chore than honest due diligence. This year's Super Bowl featured a handful of potential future head coaches of color. Chiefs offensive expert Eric Bieniemy has been discussed as a potential head coach for the last few seasons. And while Tom Brady and Bruce Arians have received much of the credit for the Buccaneers' success this season, all of the team's major coordinators are black men. Offensive coordinator Byron Leftwich, assistant head coach Harold Goodwin, defensive coordinator Todd Bowles, and special teams coordinator Keith Armstrong. Bieniemy has been passed over by multiple teams. Bowles, who took interviews with the Eagles and Falcons, had a scheduled interview with the Detroit Lions before they canceled and hired Dan Campbell, while Leftwich didn't even receive an interview. There is no clear accountability from the league regarding the Rooney Rule. The rule hasn't panned out, which doesn't mean it's a failure. It was just a starting point. The NFL can create all the incentives to jumpstart high-level hiring of people of color and women, but in the end, the future of the rule and its evolution is directly tied to the owners. In modern NFL history, only 23 head coaches of color have been hired in the NFL, and the responsibility to fix that lies at the owner's feet.
What's going on? I posted that video there because I posted it a year ago. Granted, you know, I said the Bucs won the Super Bowl because we're going to talk about today Brian Flores and some of these issues going on. As you know, this is Sports Talk 49 Live with Blake Anthony, none other than Deshaun, the T-Man Tisdale with Coach Cheese 411. What is going on, brother?
What's up, Blake? You know, great to be on the show once again here with you and all our other friends, you know, out there in TV land, Sports Talk 49. Y'all know what it is, guerrilla marketing here, and that cannabiscard.com. So you need your cannabis card in the area. You know what it is. If you're down in Florida, go get your cannabis card there. So now that we got that out the way, just like they're doing in the NFL, they're really just trying to get things out of the way. And of course, we're talking about this whole Brian Flores thing and this Rooney Rule. A lot of times, just as I did in this opening, Blake, some teams are really just trying to check a box. They're not really interested in bringing in that coach. And is there a real reason? You know, people want to say, hey, does it make a difference if it's the front or the back of the hand? You know, and that's one of the key things. And a lot of people say, oh, no, I don't think it's that. We're you know, it's 2022. It's this, it's that. I mean, we're talking about a league that if 77% or 80% of your league is of a minority, then how come none of your coaches or a larger number, if you will, not even a third of your coaches are of that minority, because we see it in any and every other sport. Ex players, people of knowledge and front office positions, different like that. They become coaches or head coaches in these other leagues, whether it's hockey, baseball, or soccer, or anything else. But when it comes to the NFL and especially basketball, we see numerous numbers of players. Now, this doesn't mean I'm saying, guys, every player can be a great coach. No. But if Tom Brady, recently retired, great Hall of Fame, obviously first ballot Hall of Fame, Tom Brady, decided that he wanted to coach somewhere, that doesn't make Tom Brady Bill Belichick. But if he decided he wanted to coach, there is no job, no organization here that will not have Tom Brady as a coach. We don't know if he could be a great coach or not at this point, but they would take him just on the prowess of his history, his historical background, what he's done as a player and things of that nature. And if we do it as teams, we look for the next version of a great player. When that happens, and looking for that next version of a great player, what will happen is you will just try to liken to someone else. So how are we not likening to any of these players when most of your players on your team happen to be black?
Yeah, it's an alarming rate. As that video showed, you have only 23 not white head coaches in the league, in the existence of the league. 23. That's an astronomical number. And the best part of that at the end was that the league has done its part in putting a system in place for those guys to be there. It solely relies on the shoulders of the owners. And that's really what it comes down to. And Brian Flores was one of those 23 that was hired, but shortly after going on a 9-game win streak, almost making the playoffs and all that, here he is fired for basically, building this team from being in the toilet, getting it in the right direction for somebody to come in and take over this team. I said, and if you don't know what we're talking about, I'll run a quick clip here of Brian Flores' interview talking about that.
Excited now to be joined by Brian Flores, who is the head coach of the Miami Dolphins for the last several years, who was released last month and has filed, as of yesterday, a lawsuit against the National Football League about its hiring practices. Also, here are his attorneys, Doug Wigdor and John Alefterakis. Yes. Thank you all for coming.
Yeah.
And Brian, let's just jump in. We have 20 minutes here, so we will be able to cover a lot of ground, and we are delighted. You filed this lawsuit, which you are aware is obviously going to have enormous repercussions. What was the tipping point for you, through your experiences, that made you feel this was something you needed to do?
Well, I mean, just, I've been on, several interviews over the years. And look, I mean, we didn't have to file a lawsuit for the world to know that there's an issue from a hiring and firing practices in the National Football League.
Why? That's correct. A lot of people have pointed this out. So why did you feel you needed to do this?
Because we need change. That was the number one reason. And I know there's a sacrifice, there's risk to that, but at the end of the day, we need change. We need change. I know many very capable black coaches, some of my staff who I know, if given an opportunity or when given an opportunity, are going to go and do a great job on their interview. And I would just hate for that to be a waste. And I think, we need to change the hearts and minds of the people making those decisions. That's why we filed the lawsuit.
Who are those people? Who specifically do you think needs the change?
The owners of the NFL.
All of whom are obviously white. I mean, sometimes, I'm a lawyer, obviously, but sometimes you need litigation to create change. The Rooney Rule didn't work. We now have less black head coaches than when the Rooney Rule started. And, Brian thought long and hard about it. And litigation's not for everyone, but he stepped forward. He's been referred to as the Rosa Parks of the NFL. And it's a testament to his character. And the litigation will create change, either because we're going to litigate the case to the end, or the NFL is going to now do the right thing faced with litigation.
Okay, let's go through some of the specifics here. We detailed earlier a text exchange you had with Bill Belichick, for whom you worked in New England at some point, in which it appears he was congratulating the wrong Brian Daboll, rather than Brian Flores, for getting the job in Buffalo. We've all read that, or excuse me, leaving Buffalo and getting the job with the Giants. We've all read it. When you first realized the mistake he had made, what was your first reaction?
Disbelief, humiliation. That was a tough pill to swallow, and that, I have a great amount of respect for Bill and Brian Daboll. Brian's a great coach. I think he's going to do a great job as a head coach in this league. I was upset that I wasn't getting a true opportunity to show what I can do, to show what I can bring to a team, which I feel is a lot. I think that's what I've shown in my time as head coach.
Yes, John.
That's what this is all about as well. There's just not equal opportunity. This is not a knock on Coach Daboll. This is a knock on the fact that the job was promised before Coach Flores even got an opportunity. And there's backroom dealings and information that Coach Belichick knows. Why? Why is that being discussed? Why do people have this information? Why is a decorated coach like Coach Flores, humiliated into having to sit through an interview and dinner when a decision's already been made?
It's worth pointing out that the Giants.
I wanted to jump into that conversation right there because I can totally, for a fact, confirm that what he says right there. There's a couple of things that were mentioned in this that I want to touch on. I'm sure you want to as well. The one fact that the gentleman who is white on there, second from the right, mentioned that the Rooney Rule does not work, and they've had more black coaches when it first started than to this day. The second part was the other gentleman to the right, all the way to the right, pointed out that there's backroom dealings. Guys are promised jobs, are given jobs before a guy even comes in there. And the part I wanted to touch in, that I have of a friend that lives right out here in Florida that confirmed conversations with Eric Bieniemy. I know we're talking about Flores, but this taps into this conversation with Eric Bieniemy, that he comes into interviews and the owners that are interviewing him, they're playing on their phone the entire time in their interview. They're not even interested in. So with that's why it was important that I played that clip before we started this conversation. That it seems to be a chore more than a due diligence. It just seems like, let's get this out the way. We're gonna bring in who we want, regardless of what the hell the NFL brings out, and we're going to do what we want to do. Your takes, Deshaun.
Listen, I 100% agree with you, and it's one of the things, like I said in the opening here, a lot of time these coaches are being brought in from a checkbox perspective, and you guys know how it is. I mean, there's times out here where you're going to do things in life where you're just required to do it, and that is not going to be you being your most diligent self. You're the hardest working that you could, if you will. And the reason for that is you're being forced to do it. You're being made to do it. You've already made dealings. Now, we know the NFL nepotism is alive and well. It has been for a long time. Many of the woes and the issues that people have around the NFL just come from the fact that a lot of us as fans and don't realize, when you're from a fandom perspective, you don't realize who's related to who. And then when you ever did realize who's related to who, and family members and friends and things of that nature, then you'll realize why, teams continue to go the way that they go, and there's no real change there. And with that being said, I hate to say the good old boy network, but it is very much so a good old boy network, from the sense of ownership sitting in a meeting with you. You're here, you've got your best dress, you've been under pressure all night. I mean, we've all been on a job interview or a first date, if you will. We're about to get connected with someone, some organization, something, some other entity, right? And you're trying to put your best foot forward. You're trying to come here and say all of your best qualities. This is a interview or first date, if you will, right? You're not trying to air any dirty laundry. They may know something about you. You don't know what it is that they do know. However, you're there trying to put your best foot forward. But what happens when you're sitting across the table from a young man or a young lady, and instead of being interested in you, they're taking pictures of their food, they're on their phone, they've got their phone up, they're fully interested in what's in their phone, and they kind of just look at you and give you and you just pay for that meal. Well, guess what? If you're Brian Flores and you're already an NFL head coach, you've already been coaching, you've been a coordinator, you don't need state dinners. He can go to Ruth Chris every day of the week, or he can go to Four Seasons every day of the week, or wherever top-notch restaurants in your local area to go to. So it's not the steak dinner or the shrimp dinner or lobster dinner, whatever it is that you think he wants with those owners. He's actually looking for the opportunity. And that interest is not truly there. Have you ever been on a job interview when, hey, you weren't qualified for the position, but they called you back? You have to think to yourself, why did they call me back? Well, guess what? They're really just checking a box for themselves, not for you. They're checking a box for themselves to say that someone in whatever your nationality is was interviewed. And now we went ahead and hired John from accounting's son, or the VP's nephew, or someone's boyfriend or girlfriend. You don't know that they're actually related. That's something you don't find out. Hire. Yeah, you don't find out that until later on down the line at the Christmas party or the outing, and then you find out that they've known each other, or dads play golf with each other, or all the other things that kind of the entanglements, if you will. That seems to be the word for this last couple of months. So you find out the entanglements. And I mean, this whole Brian Flores situation is nothing but a huge entanglement, in my opinion. I mean, the Bill Belichick thing is the thing about this interview. Aside from the lawyer speaking on the class action suit that he's bringing, and him being the Rosa Parks of the NFL, if you will, the fact that Bill Belichick, noted, storied, historical, we know who he is, we know all his accolades. He's congratulating, Brian in his phone. I'm sure he has a list of Brian's in his phone. He thought he was at the right one. So he's speaking absolutely uncandid and freely to whom he think he's talking to.
Right.
This is before Brian Flores has even gotten his interview. So when he goes to this interview, after you
say it
all
again,
have,
Deshaun, in case somebody misunderstands what you're trying to say here.
Let's bring it back. Let's bring it back again. You have Bill Belichick talking uncandidly and free and open to a Brian that is in his phone book, in his address book, in his phone. So he's looked in his phone, he searched Brian, he started texting him and talking to him, communicating him, not realizing that he's talking to Brian Flores,
who's on the
about
screen
the
right
position
now.
Right here. This man to the left that you can see here, all the way to the far left, the only black man on the panel, African-American man on the panel here. And what he does is he begins to tell him congratulations on the job and the position. At this point, Brian Flores has not even interviewed yet for the position. So we know who Bill Belichick is. We know his status in the league. If he's talking to someone and he's saying uncandid, very, very open, unmaliciously, he doesn't know that he's talking to Brian Flores. He thinks he's talking to the guy who actually has gotten the job before Flores is actually interviewed for the job.
So you're saying Bill Belichick's not to blame. It was a mistake. That was a mistake text. But the issue is that why does Bill Belichick already know that this guy's been hired and Brian Flores is scheduled for an interview that he has no shot to get? That's what you're saying, right?
No, absolutely no shot. I mean, for the last year and a half or so, I've heard names like Eric Bieniemy all over. Every single time, every position opens up, head coaching, Eric Bieniemy, he hasn't gotten one job. There's people who are like, I mean, I saw the Falcons job get picked up last year, and it's like, experience much? Like, are we the top? I mean, when you think of a job in the NFL, you think that the NFL teams that want to win so badly are going to be picking the absolute best candidate to put their team in the best situation possible. Now,
except for the Dallas Cowboys, they just pick yes men. Whoever agrees with Jerry gets hired. But go on.
That is only in Dallas town. That's where that happens. But the big star is a little bit different. We know everything's bigger in Texas, so the foolishness is also bigger as well.
That's true.
That being said, Brian Flores, I mean, when we talk about that, I mean, another comment. You're working too hard. I'll give you $100,000 for every game you lose. If that doesn't stream from the mountaintops,
I don't think we played that yet, but yeah, that's in this interview as well. I'll roll us some more, but yeah, actually, let's roll it a little more and touch into more what they talk about.
Yeah, let's go.
And said in their statement that Brian Flores was a candidate for this job up to the 11th hour. What is the response to that?
Notice they don't say up to the time that he actually interviewed. So they don't even deny the allegation that we put forth, which is that the job had already been given to Brian Daboll.
And so, Coach, I'm sure there are many watching who will wonder, why did you go on the interview at all? If you felt it was a sham, as you suggested in the lawsuit, why did you go?
Because I believe that, innately people are good and are going to do the right thing. And there's no way to allow them the opportunity to do the right thing or do, or at least make it a fair situation unless I went there and showed them that I am qualified. I am a leader of men, that I am passionate about coaching and building relationships, and I'm gifted to coach. I mean, I am. I know that. And I wanted to show them that. And I think they saw that in the interview.
And Mike, one of the things that often happens when you're dealing with racial issues is people find a soft hiding place, a soft place to say, oh, you know what? Coach Flores didn't get the job because he did an interview. Maybe he took himself out of contention. And, Coach Flores having to put his best foot forward and go, hat in hand and just, interview, knowing deep down that this job was promised elsewhere. Aside from being humiliated, that's something that black candidates often are forced to do so that an image isn't portrayed or a stigma that, hey, you didn't go, you didn't follow through, you didn't do your part. Understood.
But I would say, I think those text messages confirmed a lot of what a lot of us, black minority coaches already feel. That we're going into these, and they're shams. It confirmed that. A lot of there's a belief in, look, that was just a mistake by Belichick. We've all sent the wrong text message to somebody. But in this instance, it came to me, and it was almost, it was confirmation that those backroom dealings were happening.
Let's be very clear on why something like that might be a sham and why they would need to do it. There is the Rooney Rule in the NFL, which is something that I'm sure fans hear about quite often and may not know specifically, but I heard you describe it this morning in a previous interview as checking a box. So the existence of the Rooney Rule, in which every team must interview at least 2 external minority candidates for an open head coaching position. Doug, how does that rule impact a lawsuit like this?
Well, I think the intentions of the Rooney Rule were right. It was trying to get more of these owners to interview qualified black candidates. But when the team is interviewing a qualified black candidate and they've already made a decision, it shows prima facie evidence of intentional discrimination. It means that they've chosen a white candidate before they've even given the black candidate the opportunity. And it's not only for head coaching positions. What we really need to see are more black coaches doing offensive coordinator positions, defensive coordinator positions, special teams, quarterback. So that way it flows into the head coach positions. And we need more black owners.
And when you talk about,
I have to stop it on that one. He hit it right on the head. That would alleviate a lot of issues if you hired a black owner. But let's backtrack before we get into that. Again, it's firing all cylinders. You've already backdoor dealings that we already spoke about earlier. Promising positions. Like their words, not Brian Flores. It's a sham that you're coming into a job that you have no shot at getting at. You have no shot. You have no shot at getting at, and that the job has already been promised to someone else. And Brian Flores and his attorney, if those two thought about that together, which was smart, still show up to the interview knowing the job wasn't promised to you already. So when this all comes out, they can't say, oh, he didn't get the job because he never showed up for the interview. So he covered himself and it's a shame that you got to go through that to just prove a point to cover yourself. Now, mind you, and the other part, in my opinion, I don't think Brian Flores will ever coach in this league again. And it's sad to say that him speaking up and trying to shine a light on something, and maybe one of these owners or it'll click in their head to try to help the other guys make changes and create a fair process to make change. It's sad that he's going to be sacrificed for it. Your thoughts, Deshaun? Audio, your mic's out, Deshaun.
Sorry about that. Well, I think the deal is that I think he made a wise decision and a choice here. Once he's outed for this job in Miami, what happens really is he's then used as the scapegoat. he was not good. He was bad. It was his issue, when really, for whatever reason, the team just wants to go shoot for a number one QB. Maybe that'll, whatever the sales and revenue. I mean, because they're looking at different metrics. He's being a man amongst men and saying, hey, I have to face those guys in the locker room. And I just don't feel like I can go down there and tank and be okay with it. I mean, we watched this last playoffs with the Eagles when the head coach is pulling out Jalen Hurts out the game, and everybody's wondering, well, if he's the future of your franchise, does he not give you the best chance to win? Why are you not playing the quarterback that gives you the best chance to win? Well, guess what? The numbers from a business standpoint don't always say that that's the best situation for the owner, right? That's what we see as fans, all the talking heads on sports shows and everywhere else that's providing you guys with media coverage of total different sports and avenues and venues where we want to see players and athletes compete and just we want to see the best people come out and win. But the owners, that's not their goal. They're looking at a different bottom line. They're looking at being in the basically being in the black and setting that profit margin, and that profit margin doesn't always match up. When an owner offers this man $100,000 per loss to go ahead and lose games, he's then kind of set the tone. When owners are sitting here in a meeting and you just say, hey, I think I'm coming here to truly meet with someone about getting a job to change their organization. Imagine the amount of prep that coaches have to do or deal with. And now let's take that even a step farther, if you will. Back-to-back playoff seasons for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coach, and we'll just use them. Same thing for Eric Bieniemy as well. Several years in the playoffs, right? Not truly getting you wondering why these coaches are not. Last week they were like, oh, Bieniemy's bumbling the interviews. He wasn't bumbling the interviews. He went into those interviews and someone that either had some love for him probably pulled his coattail and said to him, hey, they ain't gonna hire you. We know what it is, right? Because guess what? You can think what you want, but Andy Reid is going to be just as connected as a Bill Belichick to find out what goes on. Same thing as a BA, right? And BA doesn't have to sit here and say he's not worried. He would love for those guys to get jobs, but I'll bring you back. If you were a Tampa Bay Buccaneer fan, and I'm sure, Blake, you'll be able to find this video because it's up. I'm sure it's up on the website. But I distinctly myself remember Bruce Arians saying when he was offered a head coaching football job, he was at Temple. He was in a meeting and offered the Temple job, of which he was at Temple and he was with Todd Bowles. He had Todd Bowles there, the player at that time. But he was offered that job, some golf courses somewhere, in a meeting among minds, right? He wasn't offered that job because he was the best person available. He was offered it because who he was, not what he knew, right? So at this point, it's very clear. He says that and he's speaking freely about it, right? This is the latter years after. But if we had to play that recording and see how many people they actually interviewed for that job or people who applied for that job, right? Only to find out later on that it was asked to him if he wanted it. Do you think no one wants to coach a college team?
Right.
Same as these NFL teams. So you've already given the job away. You're checking the box, and it's known that you're checking the box. Well, all we have to really do is look around this league and say if 80% of this league is of minority, and we only have one coach right now, and that coach has a winning record for the last 15 seasons, that in itself is phenomenal for any coach, regardless of color. So it's no reason that he would be changing, right? But anyone else, you lose 2-3 seasons in this league, and it's once again, it's not for long. So to me, I think we're talking about something here that it has been for a long time the elephant in the room. A lot of times we always think why these coaches they didn't interview well. Listen, the coach, the most of these minority coaches that are even getting an opportunity have already shown themselves worthy when they get the interview. But they realize that the interview is a waste of their time. So when they don't take the interview, it's not because, in most cases, it's not because they don't want a head coaching position. It's that they don't really feel like what is available.
Right.
What do you think on that?
No, there's just so much to cover on it. It's been an elephant in the room. Brian Flores has bravely came forward and put all this information out there. Again, I said I don't expect him to ever coach in this league again because it's already been proven multiple times, not just by that. Let's not forget about John Gruden and these emails now. That said, well, I know the emails that you didn't see and the conversations that were in there. I guarantee there were some Kaepernick conversations in there. I'm sure there was all types of different conversations that were going on in those emails. Now you're spinning off to Brian Flores, which he's terminated in the same year John Gruden is fired in this 2021-2022 season. It's something that needs to change. But here's a part that people get things mixed up. The NFL and the owners, it's like two separate parts. See, like Roger Goodell is paid by the owners. You can't get a minority owner unless one of these guys sell their teams to somebody, or black folk can get it's Black History Month, so I'll just talk about it. Black folks can get together and actually work together and create something, create an NFL expansion team to come in this league and have an NFL owned team. We could do that in the NBA. You could do that in a lot. Michael Jordan is coming to the forefront with my favorite NBA team, the Charlotte Hornets. Can the NFL do something like that? Are there some legendary black NFL, which is, like you said, 70% of them. Plus, that's not even counting the guys that are already done with the game, that gone into politics and all this other stuff. Can they work together and start an NFL franchise and things like that? So that's the only way you're going to really get a minority NFL owner, is somebody has to actually buy into the league or buy one of these guys out of that. Your thoughts?
I think when we start talking about it, Blake, are you able to hear me?
Yeah, you're good now.
Are you able to hear me, Blake?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. I think when we start talking about it, I think it's one of the things where these owners are sitting at such a position, they have no drive or need to sell, right? They're pretty much top of the hill in their aspects of most of them. I mean, it's not a money thing, and the requirements for you to own an NFL team is already an astronomical feat at that. So in most cases, it will probably not be individuals based on the way society is. When we start talking about from a minority standpoint, it would have to be a ownership group, if you will. I mean, some type of conglomerate that would purchase. But that, I guess, that entity would have to be a black owned or focal entity. From that point, you're not going to be getting like the big star in Dallas where you're going to have this one particular individual to do it. However, that being said, if ownership has no reason to, once again, like you stated, Roger Goodell is paid by ownership. He can be the front man and the fall guy for their bad decisions, and he'll take those falls because that's what he gets paid for. He gets paid to be the concierge that when the hotel decides they're not upgrading and they're not going to fumigate and they're not going to, leaks or ACs that don't blow cold or whatever it is. Right. I'm sure we've all stayed in a bad hotel. Guess what? We're going to go yell at the person at the front desk, that manager, whoever that person is. That's who we're yelling at. And that person for us in the NFL is Roger Goodell. We're not talking to the owners. The owners are going to sit back, collect their money, and keep doing exactly what they're doing. And I don't know that the NFL, I mean, it's marketed and monetized so well at this point that it could even be changed, if you will, by enough. Because let's say for the voting perspective, right? Let's say you do get this one black team. Let's say Shaquille O'Neal, Michael Jordan buy an expansion team, right? LeBron James, they all decide, Serena, or whoever, Denzel, whomever, put a bunch of people together, they're going to get a team, right? What happens? They're just one vote at that point in that ownership meeting. There's still just one vote in the ownership meeting. Nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to change at that point. There's no reason for change. Now, once again, how do you make things happen? And I know a lot of people don't like this around the country, but the players would have to strike. There'd have to be no NFL. And I think it was really, Mark Cuban said it when the NFL was just losing their mind the other year and had football on every day. And he said it. And I think it was so eloquently put that pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. It's just what it is, because it's okay for you to run around and gobble up every little bit of extra time and extra games. But when you just start infringing on every single day, I mean, the NFL is such a big movement right now that the NFL does not care what day that you're on. They will put an NFL game on that day. Friday night football for the high school kids, Saturday for the college kids. I mean, they'll just put any day of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday with COVID. It doesn't matter. So right now, I would just say that, hey, the NFL is it's kind of bigger than life, if you will, at this point, because yeah, they'll get sued, and we have Flores, and he's making the news right now. Will he settle? Will they make it some long drawn out thing where, lawsuits are great. That's just a suit. He's just, I'm not sure what the amount is that he's going for at this time, but he's going for an amount. But what will happen there? What that amount will be, and for how much he will be going for, not sure at this point. But moving forward, I could just say, hey, right now I'm not seeing Blake here, but guys will just keep it going.
An assumption that the owners and the upper management are people who are going to do the right thing and hire based on merit and not based on someone who they're comfortable with, someone who looks like them. And, that's what this is about. We've listed in our complaint a list of demands that we want to see, tying, hiring practices to performance. Hire a black coach, hire black executives, open up the process and provide objective evidence of what went into your decision-making process, so these decisions aren't done with the all-white owners in backroom dealings with people who make them feel comfortable because they look like themselves.
So you're saying a level of transparency that you believe does not currently exist. So that's one of the three specifics that you cite here of teams. That's the New York Giants. Let's go to the job that you did get in Miami. When you were the head coach, you allege in the lawsuit that the owner, Stephen Ross, approached you about tanking games to get a better draft choice and said he would give you $100,000 for every game you lost. As you can imagine, that obviously has enormous repercussions. What can you tell me about the specifics of that offer? How specifically did he state that to you?
That was a conversation about not doing as much as we needed to do to win football games. Take a flight, go on vacation. I'll give you $100,000 per loss. Like, those are just the exact words. And it's not something. Look, I deal in truth, and I say that to the players as well. I'm going to give you, good news, bad news, but it's going to be the truth. It's going to be honest. And in that instance, look, I came from. Look, this game's done a lot for me, a lot for me personally and my family. I've said this, on other, shows, but my parents are immigrants. I'm first generation. I grew up with, in a tough neighborhood here in Brooklyn, Brownsville, where there's crime and poverty and, violence. And it was hard to make it out of there. And the game of football is a reason why, or a big reason why, along with a lot of the great people mentors I've had in my life, why I was able to have the success that I've had. So to disrespect the game that way was something that, trust was lost, and there were certainly some strained relationships, and ultimately, I think that was to my demise in Miami.
And his story is not unique.
Right.
People are tweeting out. Coaches, high-level coaches, who have even contacted us, are talking about being in a similar situation. So, as part of what we're doing in creating this class action, is not just Coach Flores is taking the lead and making the ultimate sacrifice, but there's going to be more.
I want to make sure I'm clear here. You're saying coaches are reaching out about having been in similar situations with regard to hiring or with regard to being incentivized to lose games?
Both.
I want to come back to you quickly on that, though. I want to make sure I'm perfectly clear on what he was suggesting. I don't want to put words in your mouth. You were working too hard. You were doing too much in the effort to win. He was trying to get you to do a little bit less and said, I'll give you $100,000 for every game you lose?
Exactly that. That's just not in my DNA. That was never going to happen.
So what did you say to him?
That's never going to happen. I didn't come here Look, I'm always going to try to win. That's who I am. And I owe that to the players in the locker room, but also the support staff that's in the building, who work extremely hard. If you've been in an NFL building, everyone in that building, his job is important. And everyone works hard to try to get on the same page and move in the same direction. And I felt like we were building that type of culture. So I would never do that to them, you know. And at the end of the day, I think it was the reason why I'm no longer there.
Okay, so that's the Dolphins piece of this. And then there's another piece involving the Denver Broncos, in which you allege that this is back when you were still coaching in New England and interviewing for a head coaching job in Denver, one you subsequently did not get, in which you state that in an interview that you had with them, that John Elway and another Broncos official showed up an hour late, looked disheveled. It was obvious to you they had been drinking heavily the night before the interview. You say it became clear they only were interviewing you to fulfill the provisions of the Rooney Rule. What specifically can you remember about that interview?
So I've had 9 interviews with NFL clubs. There's been one interview where anyone was late. And it wasn't me that was late, it was the interviewers who were late.